Welcome back to the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. Was not a terrific Week 11, unfortunately. But hey, the only way is up, baby. The only way is up. I'm joined by an all-star cast. Rob Pizzola, the bottom right of the screen, is back after a week off. Jesse was filling in and co-hosting duties last week. Mr. Drew Dinsick at the top right of the screen, all set for Thanksgiving. In the bottom left, Mr. Fabian Sommer, who is now 8-3 on his Matchbook Insights picks. So check those out each week at insights.matchbook.com. Suma is on an absolute heater there. First of all, before we do a quick recap of Week 11 and get into Week 12, I want to talk about Safer Gambling Week here in the UK and Ireland. So US viewers may not know this, but Safer Gambling Week is the final day here on Wednesday. And a couple of things just to keep aware of with Safer Gambling. At Matchbook, we're very much aware of this, and we always promote Safer Gambling. Gambling should be an enjoyable leisure activity, so to ensure you remain in control, it may help you to remember the following. A, you should only gamble what you can afford to lose. B, avoid chasing your losses. And C, set limits to help you manage time and amounts you spend gambling. If you're watching us now, you can see the URL there, safergamblinguk.org. In a few moments' time, I'm going to leave the phone number up there, which is a 24-hour day phone number that you can get in touch with these guys. They provide some terrific content. They'll give you some pretty useful tools to manage your gambling as well thereafter. Kind of on this, Drew Dinsick, I'll come to you first, mate. I mean, look, let's call it what it is. It's a bit of a shit show. 0-6 last week with 2 losing weeks in a row. Ooh. I've been involved in this podcast, the NFL podcast with Matchbook, for about 3 years. It's the first time I've ever had 2 losing weeks in a row. But I suppose what I wanted to get at there, Drew, was, heading into Monday night especially, it's not a good idea to start chasing and start backing into the Bucs -3.5 just because you had a shitty week.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I mean, especially when late breaking news, Ali Marpet's not going, and that was one of the reasons that you like the Bucs. But no, if everyone kind of goes through the emotional parts of losing, and it really can have huge negative consequences, not just for your betting experience, but for your overall life. This time of year with the weather changing and, you spend a lot more time with family, if you're seeing any signs that, betting on sports is affecting your mental health, your key relationships in your life, you absolutely need to take a break from this. And honestly, that's the way I felt after that Green Bay Packers loss. That was the kind of classic loss that puts you on tilt. Huge, lead blown, just nonsense, soft fumbles conceded. I've been in that position in my life in the past where I would have doubled down on Sunday Night Football to get that back. I would have doubled down on Monday Night Football to get that back. And I would have been a loser in both cases. So you can't do it. It's absolutely, kind of 101 as far as your progression as a player. And I'm glad that you guys do betting, safe betting week. I hope that the United States follows suit.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's coming down the line, definitely, for sure. Suma, just kind of away from that for a second. I mean, when I saw that news coming through from the New Orleans quarterback situation, we kind of knew definitely the over was in massive peril at that stage. It was just, we recorded this on Wednesday afternoon. We had all that information by Thursday, and it was a bit of a kick in the ass, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the total plummeted by a field goal to 48.5. But the fun fact is that Taysom Hill wasn't really the problem that this game didn't go over. It was just that the Falcons offense played at the absolute worst bottom of their potential outcomes. Julio Jones, I think he left in the second quarter with a hamstring injury. So it was really funny that in the end, Taysom Hill would have been fine and enough to get this over the total if the Falcons had shown up.
This is for sure. And yeah, this is the last time I get taken in by these Falcons. Rob Pizzola, how was week 11 for you, man?
I had a winning week last week, but it was one of those that, because of some of the losses, felt like a losing week. Like I was on the Packers with you guys as well. And to me, that's probably maybe the 4th or 5th time this year where I've been on the wrong end of one of those big comebacks. I could think of a couple ones earlier in the year that the Lions blew off the top of my head to the Bears and the Falcons, I think, in the first 3 weeks of the season. But yeah, just like fumble luck, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers fumbles a snap, special teams fumble, overtime fumble. Watching the Packers go down the field on the final drive and kind of blow the clock management and leave themselves with only one shot at the end zone. I mean, there's just a lot of things that, from that perspective, we're tilting. So for me, it ended up being an okay week, but like it doesn't feel like it is what I'm getting at, just because of the way that some of the outcomes ended, and just being on the bad side of like getting out ahead of the Cleveland total or playing it over there. And then all of a sudden the weather is a disaster again, which was a complete change from the forecasts throughout the week. And I was on the Saints over as well. And you bet it early in the week, you really like it. And then you get Taysom Hill in the game. And it's like, what are you going to do? But I mean, I live to look forward, and I try not to spend too much time looking backwards, because as a bettor, that will make you go absolutely mad. And we'll move on to this week.
Absolutely, let's do that. Kansas City Chiefs first up. They take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's have a look at the current betting at the time of recording here at Matchbook. If we can just add it to the stream, there we go. So Drew Dinsick, I'll start with you first, but let's have a look at the betting first of all. Chiefs on the money line just under 1.51. You can back the Bucs at 2.84. Bucs getting a 3.5 point start at just over 1.96, and the total is 56. Drew, talk to me, man. I mean, look, we got -7 last week. I know you and Andy got involved in the second half play, and breaking news, Patty Mahomes, pretty good. Yeah,
sure is, man. Especially up against a soft defense that allows passes over the top, which is what the Buccaneers kind of have defined themselves as this year. Although all that saying, at this number, at 3.5, this is Buccaneers or nothing. I don't think you can realistically walk in and lay this Chiefs number at 3.5, recognizing that you have the Buccaneers in a pretty comfortable spot. I don't know. I guess I want to kind of focus most of my content, my thoughts here on the Buccaneers, because the Chiefs have done a phenomenal job this year. I mean, that they're winning in ways that, they're keeping some of their best stuff in the war chest for the playoffs, right? They didn't need to pull out all of their most exotic defensive aspects to stop the Raiders. They got the win because they knew that they could score a touchdown if they had the ball last, and they gamed out the game in that way. But the Buccaneers are.
We lost Drew there for a second. That will happen. Live streaming, working from home. He may just jump back in. As Suma, early indication from Drew. Yeah, we got you back in.
Are we all back?
We got you. We all got you back in there.
I can keep ripping. So the 3.5 at 3.5. This is Buccaneers or nothing. Fair price in this game is 2.5 or 3, depending on how you want to weight offense and defense. But I'm not walking to the window and betting on the Buccaneers right now for a lot of reasons. Tom Brady obviously not playing crisp quarterback right now. Some of his issues I think are probably a little bit coincident with primetime games. He's especially performing poorly in primetime. This is now not even just this season, but going back to last season, he performed extremely poorly in primetime down the stretch. I don't know if it's something mental. I don't know if it's just when it's a step up in class in terms of defense he's playing, he just is exposed. But whatever the case is, he is not performing well against the toughest competition in the league. Granted, this is an easy defense. And then secondly, you absolutely have to scrutinize what Bruce Arians is doing, what Byron Leftwich is doing, and calling this offense. It makes you want to pull your hair out. It's so tough to watch. It is such a misfit for what this skill set of the offensive players they have on the field are capable of. They're wasting downs consistently on a drive. Even a successful drive, they'll waste a couple of downs with like very predictable handoffs with minus EV targets to Leonard Fournette, who has cinder blocks for hands. Like it's very tough to watch this team and recognize you have some of the most talented wide receivers in the entire NFL out on the field, and they're just not being utilized in a way that Tom Brady, we know, can utilize. And so until they really snap out of it and show us plus EV offensive, scheming, really, I don't think I can get involved with the Buccaneers right now. If I had to make a play on this game, I'm taking the over. I think you can see a case where, the Chiefs defense, which is susceptible, gives up early points to the Buccaneers in this case. And maybe the best bet in all of football right now is a live over when the Chiefs are down.
or just betting the Chiefs on the money line when they're down as well. Because you're getting no value though. Because I was looking into this at the weekend, and even when they had that last drive, I think they were barely plus money, and you're like, there's just zero value. You know, the models have adapted. Rob Pizzola, what do you think about this one, man?
Yeah, so I agree that this is a Bucs or nothing type of game. Like the market hasn't really, I'll say, overreacted a ton. Like the look-ahead line in this game was 3. We're now seeing 3.5 pop up at Matchbook, and I mean the difference between 3 and 3.5 is significant, but it's not something where we're getting an obscene amount of points over the course of the week because of a Bucs poor performance. But I do think Tampa Bay's performances against the Rams is a little bit misleading last week because, like Drew mentioned, you know, Ali Marpet was likely going to go in that game. He doesn't end up going. Then they lose their left tackle, Donovan Smith, on the first drive, I believe, of the game. He eventually comes back into the game, but they also lost their starting center in that game. So the offensive line was very depleted going up against a Rams defensive line that has the best defensive lineman in football. And they are moving Aaron Donald around on the line now as well, which is causing all sorts of matchup problems. And, you know, the key to, you know, disrupting Tom Brady, get pressure without blitzing. The Rams were able to do that. And it was just a complete, you know, abomination for the Bucs offense the rest of the way. They'll probably have a better shot if they can get some offensive linemen back this week, but we don't know what the state of that O-line is going to be. And the strength of that Chiefs defense is a defensive line as well. I mean, they have some disrupting players on that defensive line that can really cause the same problems as we saw a week ago. So I'm leaning to the Bucs here. It's something that it could potentially go on as the week goes on here, but I have to see what the state of that offensive line is going to look like. And honestly, the thought of betting against Mahomes, I just don't do it often. But I will point out one thing, and Patrick Mahomes to me is the best quarterback I've ever seen. I can say, like, maybe not in terms of longevity like Brady and Manning, but he's the best quarterback I've ever seen personally. And you look at the defenses that he's played this year really have not been good. Like, aside from early in the year where they played Baltimore, with top, you know, defense in the league, and then the Chargers in week 3 where they really struggled, they have not played a good defense since then. It's been Las Vegas twice. They've played Denver. They've played Buffalo. Like, if you look at that schedule, it's been Mahomes against defenses that are really bad, and he's exposed them. But now we have Mahomes against a defense that is better than it looked against the Rams. And potentially there's some stops in there, and he doesn't look like a god in this game, and, you know, basically scores a touchdown every time he gets the ball. So I lean to the Bucs, but I really want to see how this plays out over the course of the week with their O-line. And if it's a healthy O-line, I will play Tampa Bay.
Suma, I suppose the guys are leaning Bucs both sides there without actually pulling the trigger. We could split the difference here and maybe bet the over, Suma. What do you think? 56, and it opened at that. It hasn't been bet up. 57 is obviously a key number when we get into the mid-50s. What are you thinking here, man?
I wanted to bet the over at the opener yesterday, and as soon as I wanted to hit submit, someone bet it up to like 55.5 or 56, so I was just late. Holding out, maybe someone bets the under throughout the week. I really like the over here, and I think that game could easily fly into the 60s. Both guys have made phenomenal points about this matchup. I think after week 11, we pretty much know what we are getting from the Buccaneers this year. They are reliant on individual talent. They match up well against good defenses with proper cornerback play, like last week, Jalen Ramsey and Darius Williams. And this week, even though the Chiefs' defense is pretty solid, I think that they don't have the cornerbacks to cover Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. So that's really a matchup that I like for the Buccaneers. The Bucs, Drew mentioned their play calling. On first down, with a win probability between 10 and 90%, Arians and Leftwich are calling the 11th most runs in the league on first down. And they are like, I think, 24th in EPA per rush on those plays. It's always inside handoff. There's no creativity in their run game. I don't really get the point of trying to establish the one with Leonard Fournette on inside runs where every run gets telegraphed to the opposing defense. But the Chiefs are not good against the one, so that's where they are vulnerable. We saw it against the Raiders. We saw it against the Panthers, against Christian McCaffrey. So I think this is a matchup where those inside handoffs on first down won't do as much damage as they did against Aaron Donald. I think in that area, the Chiefs might be a little bit more successful. And then I really see that Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans have good matchups against those cornerbacks. And the Chiefs are going to score points in this one. And maybe that game script might force the Bucs to open up their passing game even more. So I don't really see how these two offenses run a lot and combine for a lot of wasted drives, empty drives. I think this is a game that could easily fly into the low 60s with both teams being able to score 30 or more points. But like I said, I missed on the early number, waiting if that comes back. I don't think I would really mind anything like 55 later in the week, but definitely trying to hold out. And on the side, at 3.5, it's basically Bucs or nothing for me.
We could take the 56, of course. But Drew, just before we decide on that, jump back in there, man.
I think we do take the 56.
Let's take it. Yep.
The more I think about this,
Jamel Dean as well is a question mark in the secondary for Tampa Bay this week. I think he had a concussion last week, which is, I mean, I think we're all in agreement here that it's over and Bucs. Like there's no other real way to look at the game. Yeah. But I mean, it's just the challenge for me is these numbers that are in the high 50s. Like everything has to go right. I mean, you get a couple field goals in the game and you're cooked, and that's just the reality of these high totals.
I got a good counter for you. There's a very memorable game where Tom Brady went up against Andy Reid, and he played keep away from Pat Mahomes for a whole half. Yes. I think Pat Mahomes had 6 snaps maybe in a half of football, and that game finished with 63 points. Or something crazy like that, maybe more. I can't even remember. Yeah. And so it is. I think the over is the look here. In general, Tom Brady's played well against Andy Reid. I mean, there are some very memorable Tom Brady Chiefs games that landed in the 60s and 70s. So I think the over is the look.
Yeah, I don't see where there's too many stops here. I don't think the punters see too much action. They might as well stay at home. Okay, so look, I think it's a kind of a tentative one. I think it's not a number that is absolutely ideal, but however, it's possibly one that will be bet up to 56.5, 57, I would suggest. That's just the way I would see it. I can't see it coming down. I don't think there'd be enough resistance there in the market. All right, let's put in 56 and we can recap. Sorry, Drew, you wanted to come back in?
The last 2 quick points. Rob's point about the offensive line injuries for Tampa is very relevant. If we continue to get bad news, the number is going to come down. So I don't know that there's going to be a scramble here. Like there's really no rush to get this over. I do think the move was made. It's going to sit here at this point unless there's bad news on the injuries front for the Bucs offensive line, in which I could see it coming back down. So I don't know if there's a real rush.
Cool. Okay, no problem. Let's move on. So, gentlemen, let's move on to the second game we're covering on this evening's show. We're going to look at the Titans and the Colts. Betting at the time of recording at Matchbook on the money line, you can back the Titans 2.6. What a win that was last week in Baltimore. You can back the Colts at just over 1.57. This line has come down, and I think I know why, and I'll explain why in a second. The Titans +3. 2.03. He's already giggling. I know why it's come down. 51.5. So, Suma, why has the line come down from 3.5 to 3 for the Titans? Tell me.
I might have had something to do with it. I played the Titans +3.5 yesterday at, I think, -105. And to me, that number was just wrong. And I want to try to explain why from a market perspective. So 2 weeks ago, we had the Titans playing against the Colts in their first matchup. The closing line was Indianapolis -1 on the road at Tennessee. So home field advantage is largely irrelevant. Let's say we give half a point for home field advantage, 1 point at the maximum. So if you flip home field, you are arriving at Colts -2, -2.5 maybe. So why is that number -3.5? And what has changed since the opening kickoff 2 weeks ago? The Colts won, I think, 34-17, but in the third quarter, it was 2017 Colts at some point before the Titans collapsed on special teams. They had a blocked punt return touchdown. They missed a field goal. A.J. Brown had that crazy rare drop deep down the sideline, which I think would have been a walk-in touchdown if he catches the ball. They lost Roger Saffold halfway through the game. So that's not really a game where the Colts have outplayed the Titans severely. They just were able to finish the game very well. And since then, nothing really has changed. The Titans might be with our Jadeveon Clowney again. They will be with our linebacker, Jayan Brown. They might, or I think they will likely get Roger Saffold back this week. Adam Humphreys should be back this week. And if we look at both seasons, there's nothing really that separates these two teams a lot. I think from a power rating standpoint, I've got the Colts at -1 or -1.5 on a neutral field. But that's pretty much because I'm really high on that coaching staff. I'm slightly higher on Phillip Rivers compared to the market. But these are two offenses where it's really a big discrepancy. The Titans rank 3rd in DVOA on the season offensively. They rank 3rd in EPA per play on the season. And they have played a really tough schedule. They have played like defenses of the likes of Denver, Chicago, Pittsburgh. And there was not really any game where that offense really got shut down. And I think they are able and capable to move the ball on that zone-heavy Colts defense. They should do a lot of damage with their play action offense. And like I said, I don't really get to that number. I think it moved down to +3. I would still like the Titans at +3. I think they have a solid matchup, and the first game was not really indicative to the game this week. So yeah, I took the Titans. I like them down to +3, and I think they have a very good chance to get to that first seed in the division this week.
Well, you look, 3.5 is still available at 1.86 at Matchbook at the time of recording. Rob, in agreement with Suma here?
I am. So I make this line 2.5, and I think Suma made a lot of good points here. But we can start with the home field advantage. I like how he compared to the market a couple of weeks ago. But just in general, if we're looking at home field advantage over the course of the last decade, it's been much smaller in divisional games as well. So that's something to take into account here. There could be literally no home field advantage in this game, based off the way that we're seeing things trending. The concerns for me with the Titans are obviously the injuries on defense, but I think there's one unit that is really overrated going into this game, and that's the Colts offense, just in general. So if you look at the Colts offensive numbers this year in terms of EPA per play, you're going to see roughly an average, league average offense. But when you start to account for the quality of defenses that they've played this year and you adjust based off those defenses, I have the Colts offense ranked 23rd in EPA per play this year, schedule adjusted. So while the Titans have a horrible defense, and I probably have them maybe right at the bottom going into this week's matchup, it's kind of like strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness in this game. And I just don't see one side having the significant advantage over the other. So you got a Colts offense that I think is below average going up against a bad defense. And then a Titans offense that to me is extremely good. And people will talk about, oh, they've kind of struggled in recent weeks. But even if you just take a smaller sample, look at the past 4 to 6 weeks in terms of EPA per play for the Titans offense, it's still a top 5 offense. Like, it's not like they're falling off to a horrible number. So to me, there's just not that much separation between these two teams. And I agree. I like the underdog here.
Drew, what do you reckon? You going to join in? 3
clean sweep. Clean
Yeah.
sweep. I got in yesterday at +4. I took a little more this morning at +3.5. I agree that this is basically a numbers play. I could even make a case that the conditions probably favor Tennessee playing indoors, just because of the strength of their passing attack. I like that Saffold is trending in. I hope he goes, because there is kind of a cluster injury on the left side of that offensive line for Tannehill. Buckner's playing well. He's he can generate a little bit of pressure, and I could see him being a little bit of a disruptive force if Saffold is gone and they have Isaiah Wilson at tackle and they have Queensberry at guard on the left. That's a little concerning. Also somewhat concerning, Art Smith seems to have lost his fastball. He was throwing 100 miles an hour earlier this season. They had just a really solid passing attack when they had a healthy Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis. They finally getting contributions from Corey Davis. AJ Brown was cooking, and in the last couple of weeks, there's been a little bit too much predictable running to Derrick Henry early downs and in game situations where I would like to see them be more aggressive. They've been too reliant on the run. That's not to say that that's going to continue. And it's not to say that Derrick Henry's not going to be the deciding factor in this game, because, the Colts have played a couple of, very physical, very intense games the last couple of weeks. And obviously one of them against the Titans where, they got it done with special teams. But, realistically, like, the Colts can only get it done with special teams so many times. They did it last week, getting that forcing the fumble on the kickoff return. They did it 2 weeks ago with the block punts. I don't know how many. You can't sustain winning, by getting it done on the margins that way. Frank Reich is a great decision maker as a coach, but I don't love what he's doing with the scheme. And realistically, there's not enough about what Philip Rivers is doing right now and his performance that scares me from taking the dog here. Fair price should be -2, -1.5 maybe, by my numbers. So I'll take anything over a field goal. And I guess I'm glad that the market is kind of coming with us on this. I think that's the right move. I didn't understand the initial move out in favor of the Colts. That didn't make any sense to me. So I'm glad to see it come back.
Rob Pizzola, jump back in.
Yeah, so there's this perception that the Titans can't win games or their offense can't be successful if Derrick Henry gets bottled up. Like, that's the feeling in market. Yeah. So a lot of people look at this game and they'll be like, oh, the Colts run defense is pretty strong. They're going to be able to bottle up Derrick Henry. But we actually have a pretty large sample of games where Henry is bottled up and Tannehill goes off. And I almost think that works to the Titans' advantage and forces them to throw more in this game against a team that has a very good run defense in general. So I'd love to see the Titans open it up, use a little bit more play action and things of that nature. But I think that's just a false perception in market in general, is that the key to success to beating the Titans is to stop Derrick Henry. And it's really not. It's to stop the passing game and force them to run Henry as much as possible, to be completely honest. And I kind of just like that. And I do think Tennessee's going to throw a little bit more here.
Yeah, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's Ryan Tannen's numbers through 11 weeks. Guys, just before we jump off this, from a betting perspective, so as we said already, you can get the Titans plus a flat 3 at 2.03, or you can bet them at 3.5 at 1.86. I think I know the answer here, but look, straw poll between the three of you guys. Do you take the plus 3? It's a long way down even to go for that hook. Drew, do you want to maybe answer that one, Matt?
I'm not going for the hook on this one. I'm not, in general, I'm not weighing the hook. And, this is a 51 point total. That's relatively high. It's going to have to be, exactly the right combination to land on 3. The push probability of 3 is going down, especially when you get into these higher totals. So I don't have a problem just taking plus 3 as opposed to the plus 3.5 at 1 point. Would you say 1.82? That's way
1.86. Yes, it's still a big jump down to 2.03.
Yeah, I'd much rather have the 3 at close to 2.0.
Yeah, I think your answer there. And Rob, you were nodding your head, so I think that's censored that one.
I don't have my chart up in front of me here. It does depend on the game total. And Drew pointed that out as well. But I'd be shocked if the 3 isn't more valuable than the 3.5 here.
Absolutely. I think you guys hitting it there. The higher the game total, that's the way to go. It's different if it's obviously a total in 37, 38. Right, we're halfway through our main slate.
37, 38. What's sport? Not the
those Thursday night games last season between the Jags and the Titans. Those for those ones. We had about 2 of them. They were great. Maybe Cleveland and Cincinnati was a good one as well. Just before we're halfway through our main.
Bears Saints went off at 37 last year.
Yeah, that's right. This is like, they were the days. They were the days.
Points by themselves in that one.
They were the days. Just a couple of comments I want to get to here, guys, before we're halfway through our main slate here. And we do very much appreciate the comments coming here in the live stream. Just one comment here about the Thursday games. Why did they skip Thursday games? Reason being, we're recording this on Wednesday. It's just a bit of a lack of shelf life. But check out the deep dive pod. The guys are going to be having halftime periscopes. Follow Drew's account at the Whale Cap, where they will be fun. There will be lots of drinking involved and lots of halftime betting. And yeah, definitely the last one, if we do have the Steelers game, will be a lot of fun. Drew Dinsick, you're going to be looking forward to those, surely.
Yeah, and just as a quick preview, if the Lions manage to win on Thursday morning, they're going to get real sloppy because I'm going to be doing some serious, doing some serious licking of my wounds on that one. I've got some pretty solid Houston positions at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the under, as you guys said, is very much in play there as well. One or two other comments there from Shane has been touched on YouTube. If we see the AFC Conference playoff Pittsburgh Steelers, the Chiefs, how do we see the other under and handicap? Ooh. I going to go -3 handicap. The Steelers win narrowly. It's a good question, Shane. And I like these look-ahead ones. Anyone very quickly want to jump in here with those numbers? Shane way off, or is he right?
At this point, it's going to be inside 3 probably. Steelers keep moving up in the market number, and the Chiefs on the road, I'm guessing Chiefs on the road in Pittsburgh, probably going to go off at -2.5, maybe 3. And the total, I would guess you're going to see 49, 50-ish.
Yeah. I think higher on the total if the weather is fine, but you never know what the weather is going to be like in Pittsburgh in January. So, right. I mean, just looking at my numbers right now, I would make KC 2.7 and I'd make the total around 52. But I'm generally higher on Pittsburgh overs in general, and I've played a lot of their overs this year. But yeah, I mean, it's the Chiefs Super Bowl to lose. It's the Chiefs AFC to lose is the reality of it. Like this is the best team.
Just 2 last comments before we move on, guys. This thing we do has been touched on Twitter. Don't let gambling be a burden on your life. Keep it fun, folks. Very well said. Pretty much covers it better than even we could. And the last comment, Drew Dinsick, Fabian Sommer, and Rob Pizzola. Top lineup puts Betfair to shame. Wow. Do Betfair have an NFL podcast? That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. I can't really comment anymore on that, guys. There will be a lot of bias. But look, maybe check out theirs and check out ours, and you can kind of compare the two, and you can come up with your own answer thereafter. Right, we poked the bear there, guys. Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals and the New England Patriots. Whoa, literally just went off the board, guys. I'm not totally sure why. Yeah, it just literally went off the board as soon as I clicked on it, which is kind of interesting. But look, let's talk about it. Maybe it was just, I don't know why it's off the board, but the line was 2.5. The Cardinals laying 2.5 at New England. The total was, and we're pretty sure will be, we might just check up on this in the next couple of minutes as we're talking. The total was 50. Rob Pizzola, I know you were kind of keen to talk about this one. What was the lean, mate? Were you going to lay him with the Cardinals, or are you going to take the Pats with the points?
I was going to lay it with the Cardinals. So my guess for why the total is off the board here is probably something related to Kyler Murray and his throwing shoulder, which has been a concern over the course of the last week. And I know that Cliff Kingsbury had said that they were potentially going to dress 3 quarterbacks this week instead of the usual 2. So it is a concern. But to me, this is more of a fade of the Patriots going forward than it is anything else. So one thing that I love to do in general is just I call it modeling the market. So I basically have an algorithm that kind of ranks the teams based off of where the market is seeing them based off of closing lines and games. And right now, I think that the market ranks New England somewhere in the 15 to 17 range as like a league average team. And I just don't get that. And I don't understand how anyone can get to that. And I think this is just so much of a perception of what the Patriots used to be and the Bill Belichick factor and all of these things. But the reality is that this is a well below average football team on both sides of the ball. And it's been consistently like that for the majority of this season. And I just don't see how that's going to turn around this week. If you look at their EPA per play, adjusted for schedule on both offense and defense, they rank 20th or worse in the league on both sides of the ball. So to me, if you can disrupt Kyler Murray in the pocket, fine, you have a chance. But look at last week. Like the Patriots go up against Houston, who had Laramie Tunsil out because he had the flu right before the game and he couldn't play. They still couldn't generate a pass rush whatsoever. I don't see them being able to suddenly be able to generate a pass rush on Arizona. I think Kyler Murray, provided his shoulder is healthy, has all the time in the world to basically pick apart this defense however he wants to. And I'm not sure that the Patriots can match scores. I mean, again, I don't really want to just look at 1 week as an example. This has been the case for the Patriots for the majority of the year, but not being able to match points with Houston last week, and that defense, which was a great matchup for them. New England runs the ball really well. Houston has the worst ranked rush defense in the NFL, and they couldn't match there. Like, I don't see how they're going to suddenly be able to do that against Arizona. So to me, there's a significant discrepancy between these two teams. I think this number is on the wrong side of 3 if Kyler Murray starts. So I do like the.
Yeah, I suggest he. Yeah, look, like you said, it's been the nature of these prices, especially in Wednesday and Thursday. Games are flicking off the board very quickly for the very smallest of things. So I'm pretty sure it'll be 2.5. But Suma, you were quite happy to oppose the Patriots last week. You were absolutely on the money there with the Texans. What are you thinking this week?
It's basically the same story as last week. Of course, we got to check on Kyler Murray's shoulder. Yesterday, they had practice and he was working on the side. They said that they don't want to put up lots of practice reps throws this week to keep his shoulder intact throughout the week. But if we take a look at the Cardinals offense, which has been borderline top 10 material over the second half of the season, and then we take a look at the Patriots defense. I've made some notes. EPA per play 25th, yards per play 30th. EPA success rate last in the league, DVOA last in the league, completion percentage above expectation 29th. So this is pretty much a bottom 3 defense in the league right now. And they got Stephon Gilmore back last week, but Gilmore hasn't really lived up to expectations this season. And I think even if he plays on DeAndre Hopkins, I think Hopkins has the better matchup at this point of the season. I don't think that the Patriots front 7 is able in any way or shape to contain Kyler Murray on the ground around them pretty easily. The Cardinals should easily move the ball, and like Rob said, it's really hard to keep pace with the Cardinals offense if you can't move the ball. And the Patriots are very well at running the ball, one of the best rushing offenses, but that only works if the opposing offense isn't able to score points. And as soon as they have to open up their passing attack, it's going to be a struggle, in my opinion. Patrick Peterson might close down any kind of the best wide receiver like Jacoby Myers. So there's really not a lot of room to operate for the Pats offense. And I really like the Cardinals as well here. I also think it's not really at the right number right now. I'm at -3 or -3.5. And if Kyler Murray is good to go, I will be on the Cardinals.
Drew, there's been plenty of opportunities to oppose the Cardinals this season, but I don't think this is one of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, generally the breakdown was fair. I just did a little combing of the information channels, and I'm not seeing anything Patriots Cardinals related. Yeah. Diego Maradona apparently passed away. Nick actually has COVID this time, and it looks like Julian Edelman's probably not going to go. But nothing obvious that would change my opinion on this game. Going back to Rob's point, I think that was pretty reasonable breakdown of the market numbers. Arizona right now, I have 2.5 points better than an average team. Patriots, I have 1 point worse than an average team. So if this was on a neutral field, I would have Cardinals -3.5-ish. I don't give, with the Cardinals getting extra rest in this travel spot and the weather looking reasonable, I don't really have much home field advantage built in here for the Pats, maybe 2-3%. Not enough to get it under 3, which is a big, that's a big swing from 3.5 to 2.5 is a big step. So, I'm in reasonable agreement here. I can tell you, I see more positives for the Patriots offense than Suma was laying out. I think their offensive line can absolutely dictate every time they have the ball in this one. With the depleted defensive line here for the Cardinals defense, I think the Patriots are going to be able to, matriculate the ball fairly and score reasonably well in the red zone. I just don't expect that the Patriots defense is going to have an answer if Kyler Murray is healthy. In general, the Patriots defense is wildly overrated. I think they're in like the bottom 5 realistically this season. And a ton of that is because they've, bad tackling. Coverage has been decent at times, but inconsistent. And I would think that Murray, Hopkins, and really the Cardinals running game might look a little resurgent in this spot. So I think the play is the over. I got in at 49. It's up in the 50s now. I think fair price should be 53 here. And I think, but I'm fine with a Cardinals look too.
Suma, you want to jump back in there, man?
A couple years ago, we made a lot of the situational spot for Pacific teams traveling East Coast, playing an early game. And I just looked it up, and it's funny that since 2018, Pacific time zone teams are actually 23-13 straight up on the East Coast in early games against the spread 23-11, and they are winning the spread, beating the spread by 2.8 points per game. Pretty nuts. I think the trend is a little bit of noise, but it seems like teams have something figured out traveling wise. It's pretty crazy the last couple of years.
Rob, you have any thoughts on that one, mate?
Yeah, it could be one of those things too where the market sometimes overcorrects for something. Like the travel was a thing for a long time, and then everybody kind of people still reference that, right? Like whether it's touts or whoever's writing write-ups on the game, they will always talk about the West Coast team traveling east like it means something, and it doesn't. I mean, that could be something. It's a small sample too, like 36 games. You really don't know if that's noise or not. So there's a lot of things that could potentially go into it. But I kind of like Drew's overlook here as well, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I think it forces the Patriots into a game state where they do have to throw the ball, and they can't really slow it down with the amount of running that they typically do. But I mean, I'm just thinking about New England as a whole, and I hate to beat a dead horse here with this team, but the reality is, like, they looked really good against Baltimore, and that was a team that couldn't throw the ball on them. But every team that's been able to throw the ball on them, they've looked miserable on defense. And I unless Murray's shoulder is really bad here, I mean, even if it is, he might still be able to have some success because he moved the ball against Seattle fairly well with that shoulder injury. So, I think I think Arizona's scoring points here, so I overlook as well.
Yeah, okay. Over 50 is the look there in the total in Arizona, minus 2.5. And yeah, I think he should be fine. Look, just because he doesn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday doesn't mean there's going to be anything. When they're just precautionary measures. And I never really read too much into those.
His quotes, all the quotes have been pretty positive. They're basically
they have.
And he was at practice doing rehab. He just didn't participate in the on-field stuff. So I think he'll go.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Raiders, Falcons. Okay, so this is a funny one because, like, again, I got a bit enamored stupidly by these bloody Falcons last week, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there could be a look for an over here. And Rob Pizzola, you were saying last couple of weeks that the Raiders and overs was almost an automatic, but let's look at the betting first of all. 1.65, you can back the Raiders on the money line. The Falcons at 2.44. It's a flat 3 is the main handicap right now, 1.93, with the Falcons obviously getting the start. And the total, I think, has dropped a smidgen, Rob Pizzola. It's down to 55, open to 56. Betting the over this week, Rob?
I am not. I am.
Okay.
I actually had a slight lean to the – I almost had to double check that my model was outputting the correct numbers when I saw my total in this game, but I had a slight lean to the under. I'm very interested in the dynamic of the side in this game, just in general, because the look-ahead line in this game was pick 'em. And over the course of a week, we've seen this adjusted to 3 points because the Falcons looked horrible last week and the Raiders were right in it against the Chiefs. But I'm not convinced it's the wrong line, just in general. Like, I think the market has corrected properly here. So one thing about Las Vegas that I'm not sure people realize is how difficult of a schedule they've played so far this year. Now, obviously, 2 games against Kansas City is going to do that, but they've played by far the toughest schedule in the league, in my opinion. And they've looked really good at doing that. I mean, especially from an offensive standpoint. Like, defense, we know is going to be an issue for them going forward, and it has been for the majority of the year. But the output that they've had offensively against some pretty good teams this year, I know the Atlanta defense is improving. They've gotten some players back. They were very unhealthy earlier on in the year. but I don't see a large path to success in order for the Atlanta defense to stop this Las Vegas offense. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the game between the Raiders and I'm going to say the Chargers maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, except the line is much different. I mean, we were looking at a pick 'em in that game, and then in this game we're looking at Raiders -3. But I mean, just based off of what I'm seeing out of Las Vegas right now, I do think that this team is for real. And the Atlanta situation with Julio Jones is concerning because their EPA per play through the air is significantly down when he's not on the field this year. And I think it just allows opposing defenses to focus in on Calvin Ridley a little bit more. So I think this is the right number, but I'm very interested in where this goes because I do expect that there will probably be some buying on the Falcons later in the week as a sharp side, considering the movement we've seen versus the look-ahead line.
Drew, what do you think with this one? Rob touched on it there. Obviously, the Raiders put up a terrific performance and a great game on Sunday night, and the market is liking them in a big way this week. Justified?
Yeah, no, the Falcons got my money again this week, and
okay.
It doesn't feel great. I guess I'm willing to give them a bit of a mulligan for last week. Obviously, Suma made the point off the top that the Falcons that was like at the bottom of their possible performance level from an offensive standpoint. I want to give the Saints a lot of credit though. The Saints defense over the last 4 games has been outperforming Pittsburgh, outperforming the LA Rams. They are the clear number 1 defense in EPA per play allowed over the last portion of the season. Not something I ever would have expected after how poor they looked for the first 4 or 5 games of the season, but here we are. And I think the Falcons, their season was over a long time ago. They fired their coach and they put together a nice little run, won 3 or 4. Against some teams that were kind of middling or poor. And then they go into their bye, kind of patting themselves on the back that they had sort of, kind of saved themselves from an embarrassing season. They went 1-7 into their bye last week. This year, they win 3 or 4 into their bye week. And, they come out of their bye a little sluggish, not a great plan against a team that had a hell of a lot more to play for. I mean, very, very obviously now, without Drew Brees for these 3 games, the Saints, they have this. These are monumentally important games for the Saints. Falcons last week, Broncos this week, Falcons next week. Like if they can win those 3 games and maintain the home field advantage, you're talking about bringing Drew Brees back off of a bye in the playoffs at home, as opposed to say going to Green Bay, right? I mean, like it's huge difference in terms of what you're asking out of your quarterback in those situations. So I think the Saints, were rightfully way more focused in that game, and their defense played up. Similarly to what we saw when Teddy Bridgewater came in for Drew Brees last year. Like Peyton has that locker room on lock. Like he's got those guys bought in. And he looks around and he says, like, hey, guys, like we don't have Drew Brees for the next couple of weeks. Everybody else has to do their job better, period. Right. And they all did. And I think Falcons are still kind of a little bit above average team. I agree with Rob that the Raiders, they have clearly a top 5 offense. I mean, I don't think that's really up for debate. They haven't played the toughest schedule defensively, but they can score. I just think 3 is a little bit much here. This is going to come down to sort of who has the ball last. I agree with Rob that the market is going to move in from 3. This probably moves to +2.5 when we get to limits up on Friday, Saturday. And I took a 3, recognizing that it's not the right number for me. I think this should be 2. I think it should be 2, 1.5 or 2, and I don't mind having a +3 in this spot.
Yeah, and it's probably closer to the pick, as Rob said, what the look ahead was if moved full field goal. Suma, what are you thinking with this one, man?
If it goes below 3, I would be really interested in the Raiders here. I think Julio Jones is not going to play. I watched a clip from a sports doctor on Monday morning, and he explained the hamstring injury he's dealing with. And he said that the only realistic option is to shut him down for 4 weeks to let the hamstring heal. Otherwise, they would repeat the same stuff all over again. he would go into the game, and as soon as he makes some cuts, the hamstring injury would pop up again. So they have nothing really to play for. There's not really a point of forcing him to play. So I would expect him not to suit up this week. As Rob mentioned, the splits with and without Jones are crazy for the Falcons this season. I also agree with Drew that they should still be able to put up some scoring drives against the Raiders defense. But overall, I don't really see how the Raiders offense is not going to score 30 points in this one. And that would make it very tough on the Falcons to keep pace without Jones in this one. So I agree that the current market number might be slightly too harsh of a reaction, but I would also get to -3 here if Julio Jones is out. And if that goes below 3, I would take a deep breath and probably take the Raiders.
All right. Drew, lots of differing opinions here, Matt. I mean, look, that's
the only thing I'll point out, this is a tough spot for the Raiders. Tough motivational spot. You just played 3 straight divisional games. You won 2 of them. You guys 2 games in a row at home. You just played on Sunday Night Football against your division rival Chiefs, and you had that game in your hand. And now go on the road and play a team that's playing for nothing. I don't know that Gruden gets these guys up for this game. I don't know that the defense can even cover Ridley and Gage, let alone, even if Julio doesn't go. I still think the Falcons are going to score on this defense. It's not a great feeling taking the Falcons ever.
That's for sure. That is for sure. Yeah.
But this should be closer to the look ahead line was a fair play on the Raiders, but +3 is a fair play on the Falcons.
All right, let's move on. I don't think we have anything there because there's a bit of division there, and I don't want to be leading people astray. So I want to talk about that game in particular, the Raiders and Falcons. We're kind of on the fence whether we talk about the Chargers versus the Bills there. And Drew, I think you may have a lean here one way or the other. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I pulled the trigger on the Chargers plus the points here. I think actually they're live for the upset. Again, a tough spot for the Bills coming off of their bye, tough to get motivated to play this Chargers team. And the Bills defense is not getting the pieces back they were hoping on to help solidify some of that. That unit's been playing poorly and they're not getting the pieces back. And to crack all things off, news that John Brown is not practicing this week, I think is important. He helps take the top off the defense, and that's really what has helped Josh Allen take a meaningful step forward this season, because he has Diggs and he has Brown. And now you take one of those guys away. The Chargers have decent coverage. The Chargers can generate some pressure. And realistically, this Chargers team has weapons that are going to hurt the Bills. Allen and Mike Williams absolutely don't get the credit they deserve for being such a dynamic wide receiver pair. Justin Herbert is pretty clearly playing at by the way, if anyone sees a stale offensive rookie of the year price for Herbert, that should be like
just snap it up. Yeah.
That's one of those where lay whatever the number is. But yeah, Herbert and this crew can score points on this Bills team. I can see the Bills mounting some sort of a miracle comeback because the Chargers do find ways to lose games. But at this price doesn't make any sense to me. There's not almost 6 points difference between these teams. It's like maybe it's 3. And this isn't a great spot for Buffalo.
Yeah, 53.5. I think that might have come down slightly. That must be some weather. There must be some wind in Buffalo at the weekend, because if there's no wind there, I don't see too many stops there with either defense.
This total is weird. Somebody opened this at 49. It got blasted up because it was such a poor opener. And then I saw 55 yesterday at Chris, and it's come back down. So somebody's all over this total both ways. I don't think you could read much in the market on that. Rob,
any thoughts on this one, Matt?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what Drew said here. I mean, there's just not a gap between these two teams, despite what the records would indicate. I know that there's some injuries on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers that are slightly concerning to me, but those are built into my number as well. And I still can't get to this. So I do like the Chargers this week. We know what the Chargers profile as, right? Like they're the team that you just don't lay big points with them in general. It's kind of narrative driven, but they always seem to find a way to play a close game for the most part. And I think that's the case here. In terms of the total, I've been really monitoring the weather here this week. It seems like wind could play a factor. Like it's one of those games where if you're just looking at the weather report, you're going to see like 10-mile-an-hour winds, which is not too bad for a late November NFL game. But it's the wind gusts, like it's gusts up to 30 or 35 miles an hour that could affect the downfield passing game a little bit more. And essentially you have these shorter pickups, less explosive plays, and that could affect the total in some capacity. I'm pretty much right on market with the total, but I do like the Chargers quite a bit on the spread this week.
All right, 5.5 currently, guys. Would that be one you still be willing to bet, Drew? 5.5. Rob, you're down your head. Yeah, cool.
I mean, obviously,
I don't think we're going to see 6.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say is that we can lock in 5.5 because I think we haven't got Suma's opinion, but I think Suma likes the Chargers as well. 5.5, I'd be comfortable playing that. But for those who are betting this game, you might as well just wait for a 6 because like if this number drops to 5, 4.5, you're not losing very much value at that point. So who knows? Maybe somebody comes into market. Maybe somebody's playing games with the market and trying to get themselves a 6 out of off screen or something like that. So I would just suggest waiting. If not, hit the 5, 5.5 whenever you see a movement towards the Chargers.
So many thoughts on this one. I think there seems to be a bit of consensus here, and we should be locking in a play.
I don't really have anything to add. I would also wait for a +6. So even if it doesn't get there, you can still take the +5, as Rob has explained. Two teams where there's not a lot of separation right now. The Chargers are playing better offensively over the past 4 to 6 weeks. And even the Bills have found a way to blow a late lead. So we might see a close battle for blowing the lead late in the end.
Speaking of the Bills, Rob, stay in the AFC East, Rob, for a second. Talk to me about this Miami and Jets line.
Yeah, I mean, the talk about like Miami going into last week was that everyone thought they were a contender and they're going to blow the doors off Denver, and then they look horrible. And it's so funny to me how the perception of one team just changes so drastically over the course of the week. And again, it's like water finds its level, right? I mean, Miami's somewhere between where we thought they were last week and where they are now. But the reality for me is that they are much better than the Jets overall. And the Jets are going to have huge offensive line issues again this week, like they've had for the majority of the season. They lost both tackles last week in their game against the Chargers. And to me, like, if you're betting the Jets, you're almost hoping for a backdoor cover like you got against Los Angeles last week. But to me, I mean, Miami has some pretty good lockdown corners. Like, it's one of those where I just don't think Flacco is going to Flacco probably. I mean, there's the potential of Darnold, but very likely Flacco is going to shred them late in the game and just all of a sudden come back and score all these points. So it seems to me like this is a get right game for Tua. Going up against a defense missing a lot of cornerbacks. I mean, a lot of has been made of his horrible performance last week, but we forget, about a road game in Arizona where he was lights out. Like, this is just the way we naturally react in the NFL. It's, what have I seen lately? And I think Tua is a downgrade from Fitzpatrick based off what I've seen this year. I still think he's fully capable of shredding this Jets defense. And in fact, I'd be willing to play some alternate lines on Miami as well. So Matchbook, I think you can get a 2.25 on Miami minus 8.5. You're not really giving up a whole lot of value there, in my opinion. This game's either going to be a blowout or it's not. So I think that's a pretty good underdog play this week.
Yeah, look, just with that 2.25, there's a bit of margin in that market at the moment. So I would suggest just wait, and you're going to get a better price. You could get close to 2.35 on that. But just on that one, so like this kind of seems, like you said, Rob, say if Miami go into Denver last week and they blow the lights out, this surely close to -9 or -10. And it's -6.5 just sitting there right now underneath that key number of 7, obviously. And it seems just like one we should be taking. Yeah. What do you think, Drew? -6.5 Dolphins. Would you leave?
I like Rob's take, honestly. This is a get right spot in every single way for the Miami offense. Jets can't get the pass rush going. Jets lost their only good cornerback. Tua is going to be able to stretch his legs a little in this one. And they're missing one tackle, but I don't really think he matters much. I think you're going to have a pretty full complement out there, and I think the Dolphins roll.
Yeah, Dolphins -6.5. Fellow Jets fan Suma, your agreement there, yeah.
If Tua can move the ball on this Jets defense, they can just play Ryan Fitzpatrick the rest of the way. Like Rob said, and Drew also, it's basically a feel-good spot. I think I checked the weather yesterday. It looked very good, sunny day at MetLife Stadium. No winds. Like I said, if they can move the ball on that Jets defense, I don't know.
Okay, I think we're going to lock that one in, guys. That'll bring us up to 6 picks before we get the best bets. Just before we get the best bets and wrap up from there, let's have a look at what we have to do a recap. Chiefs Bucs, we're going to take over 56. Titans +3 at 2.03. Arizona -2.5 over 50.0. Chargers +5.5. The Dolphins -6.5. Right, guys, almost out of time. Let's go Week 12 best bets. Rob, you're returning. Want to kick us off here, mate?
Yeah, this one's challenging for me, just in general. I am going to go with Arizona Cardinals. I know it's off the board right now. It's not going to reopen at a number that's out of my range in general. Yeah. I just think this is a great matchup for Arizona. Not a lot that I love this week, and I will preface this by I'm not making excuses for bets. I don't love this by any means because of the Kyler Murray shoulder, but to me, this is the biggest difference between my current numbers and what market is at right now.
Drew, your best bet for this week, Matt?
I'm going to stick with the Chargers. I think they compete. I'm going to take Chargers +5.5.
All right. Suma, what are you thinking?
Titans +3 at, I think, even at Matchbook.
Yeah, 2.03. Yep. All right. 6 bets, 3 of them being best bets. Guys, pleasure as ever. Thank you, Drew. Happy Thanksgiving. Rob, I think I missed Thanksgiving for you a couple of weeks ago with Canada. So you're just going to have Thanksgiving again this week, surely.
I absolutely am. That's my annual tradition is I celebrate Canadian and American Thanksgiving. So, happy Thanksgiving, Drew, as well.
You got to spread the wealth, man. I like it. Suma, we will have our turkey some other time, mate. Thursday's night's game's not spectacular, but anyway. Happy Thanksgiving to all our American viewers out there. Just looking at our podcast stats, it's pretty much 50-50 between UK and Ireland and the American audience. So very happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for listening. Been an absolute blast as ever. 6 bets in the books. And hopefully we'll get right this week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.